Greetings, Shelpers, and welcome back to the library. It is time for the long-awaited, promised poetry stream. And this time we are going to be talking about column poems. Now, it's been a while. I think it's been like months since I promised this. And I apologize. Life kind of gets away from me, especially with my book and the holidays, and it's been all kinds of like little bit of bananas around here. So okay, I will try to do the best I can. Some of this is going to be a history lesson. I hope it's not too boring, but I am going to say I started researching this because I wanted to know if there was a formal name or anything. And I spent weeks like diving into different resources, and I've learned some things. So I think that's when a good topic appears, is when the person presenting it can actually learn. So first of all, I ran into the fact that column poems were called twin cinemas. And I was like, okay, well, let me look into this. So they were created in Singapore in 2010. So right away, I knew this is not what I was looking for. Because when I was introduced to column poems, it was in the 1990s. So definitely not. We're talking like decades different. But anyway, it was first invented by, and I'm going to murder this name, apologies, Yao Kai Chai. The form didn't make sense read across as it was first inspired by John Ashbery's Litany from 1979. Okay, what Litany was, to my understanding, was a very long poem that was basically in the form of a record cover. Like in the back of an album, on the sleeve sometimes, they would have a division line in the middle, and on each side were the columns that would sometimes be like where the lyrics were or other stuff. So you didn't always get like a lyric sheet like you did with CDs or now on Spotify when you can just click on them. So that's what inspired this person to begin with their form of a column poem. And since it's called twin cinema because it's like being in a movie theater where there is more than one screen showing something. So if you're watching, let's say, a horror movie on side A, side B of the theater might be showing an action movie, a love movie, a comedy, whatever it is. So they thought it didn't have to make sense put together. The modern day idea of it was crafted by David Wong, and David decided that yes, it did have to have some relation to at least part or whole of what was on the paper. And that's where they get their column poems. There is also something as a triple or quad cinema, which have more columns. You know, quad is 3 or 4, tri is 3, triple is 3. So we got all that going on. But still, this was not what I was looking for quite. But going through their version of column poems was interesting because they have some variants I haven't seen in, let's say, American column poems before. And their variations include jukebox, which is composed of entirely song lyrics, which is a type of found poem, and a meta-twin, which is composed of your own lines, like repurposed and reused, or other people's lines, repurposed and reused. Now, these two types of variants are what we call found poems. And a found poem is just when you take something else, like maybe words from a flyer or the back of a cereal box or songs, and you kind of like piece them together to make a new poem or whatever. Yes, you have to say, I took like inspiration from Jingle Bells or whatever, but most people would know that. But it's always good to give credit for where your source material came from that you're currently using. Okay, the third type I put down here because I saw it more with Singaporean form of twin cinema than I did anywhere else, and that is the dueling poem. Though, funnily enough, in 1990, this is the type of column poem I was first exposed to as a kid. Each column is adversarial, but fits together if read across. Now, twin cinemas nowadays, and what they call it now, the column poems are called contrapuntal. I'll get to that. They are usually complementary, but they don't have to have that adversarial tone. One of the things that makes a dueling poem so great is the performance of the dueling poem. In a dueling poem, you have two or more sides that are at odds. And if you read them straight down, as you're supposed to do, they convey one message. Where if you read the whole straight across, it conveys a harmony. So there's dissonance or dual or adversarial and the harmony. So I'm going to give you an example here. This is usually read, the loving side would be read with the first line, and then the dual side would be read by another voice in the second line. But we're going to just read them both straight down right now. Elementals, loving. They dance on a match head, twirling on tiptoe, arms around each other, as they listen to the pop of their bodies in smoky grace. See, they're flowing, they're dancing. Dual. The two, flame hair flying, stare eye to eye, holding their breaths, made by the heat, circling their and focused, they draw their weapons. So this has nothing to do with love over here. This has to do with the fight. Yeah, but this is the dual, the fighting part. Hi, how are you? How are you, Shy Guy? Okay, so when read together, they perform harmony. So you have the loving side, the dual side, and then they dance the two on a match head, flame hair flying, twirling on tiptoe, stare eye to eye, arms around each other, holding their breaths as they listen to the pop made by the heat of their bodies, circling and focused in smoky grace, they draw their weapons. So it is a more harmonious thing to read together, but if you read them down, they are different. And I would have shown you that at some point if I would have had someone to record A and B with. But that is called a duel. And it is in twin cinema and the more basic usage of the contrapuntal poem. So, contrapuntal poem. It is a form that combines two or more poems into a new poem, which is what a twin cinema actually is. So, history and origin. From the Italian contrapunto, meaning back switch. It also means counterpoint. Or, hold on, has notes, needs notes. Give me a sec. I don't speak Italian. Contrast or counterpoint. So the name itself, contrapunto, may refer to a type of poetry that is actually accompanied by music. But that's where we get contrapuntal. Oh, okay. I hope good stuff is happening for you. I'm managing as much as I can. So, what is counterpoint music? Counterpoint music has multiple melodies combined. Each is given equal importance to create a new melody. And jazz is actually quite famous for this. So if you hear jazz and it sounds like different instruments are going in different directions, you are probably listening to a counterpoint composition. Now, contrapuntal poems are at least 100 years old. No one knows where they originated, but the Russian novelist and poet Andrei Bely is noted for employing the form and devices of music in his long poem Pervo Svendini. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's Pervoe space Svidanie from 1921. So I don't speak Russian, but since he wasn't playing it at least 100 years ago, we can safely say it's at least that old, but we don't know for sure if Andre himself came up with it. So we have another example here of a column poem with 3 columns. You can read them down. Each one should make sense, at least somewhat in its own way. And then you can read them straight across. So, Frayed Love, we're going to do down first. You are the one following me past windows, reflecting silhouettes mocking our sideways dance, momentum leading us along. Middle, I cling to dawn a wakefulness, birds hopping as you and me. We, unreasonable, will only wind down when we dare dream. 3. Future memories I can't find like ghostly voyagers, jerky and intense, unravel, already frayed, ending in soft circles, old clockwork toys of our past lives. Now if we read it like a full poem, you are the one I cling to, future memories following me past dawn, a wakefulness I can't find like ghostly windows, reflecting birds hopping as voyagers, jerky and intense, silhouettes mocking you and me. We unravel, already frayed, our sideways dance unreasonable, ending in soft circles. Momentum will only wind down, old clockwork toys, leading us along when we dare dream of our past lives. It all has to fit together. So that is a triple. The more columns you get, the more danger you have, because you have to literally ram them together and have it all make sense. Now, the next poem is not mine. I gave a source of where I found it. I could not find the poet's name, but please go there and check out their stuff. I wanted to show this because the lines are not away from each other. So you don't have to actually, that is how you do contrapuntal, the counterpoint poems. But these don't often have, see how they're almost touching? You could almost say, are these supposed to touch in the middle? These direct few words like come undone, standing at the edge? Or is it just that that's how long the lines were? So this one is called Grow with Courage. Grow, like a seed, her shell will crack. Her insides will burst forth, and she will come undone. To those who do not understand, it looks like annihilation, but she is growing. With courage, she carries within her all that she needs, and she will take a leap of faith into the heavy darkness. Standing at the edge of a cliff, falling with her eyes closed, it looks like self-destruction. She's not falling, she's rising. And then again across. Like a seed, she carries within her all she needs. Her shell will crack, and she will take a leap of faith. Her insides will burst forth, and she will come undone into the heavy darkness. To those who do not understand, standing at the edge of the cliff, falling with her eyes closed, it looks like self-annihilation. It looks like self-destruction. But she is growing. She is not falling. She is rising. I loved that one when I first saw it. I was like, oh my God. So, as I stated, everything that I say is not mine, and I give sources. So, this is for entertainment purposes a little bit, but mostly educational. So, I think I'm under fair use. I hope so. I don't mean to step on any toes. Okay, so now we go to types of contrapuntal, and of which there are quite a few. The side-by-side, which is the traditional column poems I've been reading to you. Stacked or shuffled, which is 2 poems are written straight down a page, and then a third poem is created by altering the lines from the first 2, and I will show you what that looks like. A Venn diagram poem, you know, the 2 circles that interlock in the middle? It has 3 columns of writing. The center poem, the one in the overlapping circle part, has to make sense by itself. Each side circle composition does not have to. So it's different than a regular contrapuntal because you don't have to make every single column make sense alone. So that in itself is a huge departure from what I'm used to in column poetry. So of course I had to be an idiot and try it. Okay. So the left side circle ends with the lines that are in the center, and the right side starts with the lines that are in the center. And I will show you what that looks like later on. And then there's abstract, which the lines can go all over, and you can have like 3 lines and then 2 lines, and then one's like left aligned, and then next 3 are like right aligned, and then there's a part of a 4th line in the center. It gets very difficult to read and parse out. So I kind of left most of the abstract stuff in this link on the bottom here in green, because it has a lot more examples than I could possibly give you. And you can kind of parse that out if that's something you want to jump into beyond the basics I am showing you here. Because I don't even fuck with abstract poems as far as contrapuntal goes, because I still want it to be able to make a sort of sense. And I have seen like a lot of experimental poems where they're flinging stuff around, and no matter which way I tilt it, it leaves you with an impression, but not necessarily a meaning, like a language poet would kind of do. And I understand that sometimes poetry doesn't have to have a certain type of cohesion in order to be good, but I just prefer that to make sense, to get it done. I know that probably doesn't make sense to some people, but this is one of the contrapuntals that I see the stretch across the top and bottom, and I love the form. But I was looking at it going, okay, does that mean the words in the middle, which would be on the top, blurry eyes frantically, 2, because the 2 is offset, and then it says, her out of the fear of voices. So I'm like, I can't read the middle as its own poetry. So what I think I have to do is take this full line as the start of poems 1 and 2. So each time I read the poem, I have to read the full line. So it would be like, she stands with tears, blurring her eyes, frantically jiggling the locked knob. But then it should go on where I can read the rest of column A and then column B. So she stumbles and sinks from the heavy weight, and from the decay she cannot fit anymore, can't smile anymore. If the candle that lights her joy is extinguished, she plunges, dives, flies, wishing on stars that she'll have the courage, pursue infinite dreams in the cruel confines in her mind. She is looking, searching for a solid, clear pathway to steady, support her in the churning tides. Oh, she is digging for an open doorway to lead her out of the fear of voices and constraints of dreams. And then I think you have to go backwards and read the first line again to go down the right-hand side. I think abstract is pretty popular. People really want to mess with it a lot. And I understand pushing form, but to me, as a poet, and maybe it's just that I'm a baby still in some ways, or an old woman who's set in her ways, I don't know. When I'm writing poetry, I want a reason. Not, oh, I want to fling like every third word off to the right just so that it looks different, so that it takes up, white space. And it's like, okay, white space is page space, so we have quite a bit of it in the middle here. So why they chose the lines to bridge across the top and bottom, could it be just a purely aesthetic choice? Yes. But there's probably some form of symbolism here. At least I would like to think so, but perhaps not. Also, the 2 hanging out on its own by the side, is that because it became ununiform on the right-hand side? Because if you will look carefully at the right-hand side, there are gaps in the words a fair bit. So is it to keep everything uniform, the gaps? Because it will mimic more the column on the left. So is it purely for structural, aesthetic reasons? Or is there a reason with the meaning of the poem that she, I want to say she, but maybe it's they, because their name is Chelsea Gould, and this is the poem Escape. Is there a reason why? Like, is the poem's title, Escape, is it supposed to be like the fact that it makes a cage? The poem looks like it makes a cage on the inside. Do you see what I mean? And the 2 could be very well a doorknob. Like it makes a cage, or maybe a door with a doorknob. If you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So in a way, this becomes what they call concrete poetry as well. And concrete poetry is where you take a shape, and the poem and the shape of the words of the poem kind of make something. So to me, looking at it on the screen here, it looks like a concrete poem because it looks like the words are bricks or some kind of like concrete with lines in it. And the top and bottom line with the word 2 is the door with the doorknob. And since it's Escape, it would make a lot of sense for the poem to look like this. But am I just seeing something, odd, or is that intentional on the poet's part? But I hope you understand where I'm getting the door and the doorway from. So when you read the right-hand side of this poem, you're going to have to read the full line across on the top and the bottom to get the gist of it. So, she stands with tears blurring her eyes, frantically jiggling the locked knob, and begs to be set free. Locked. Yeah, so could be. But yeah, I see it as a door now that I'm looking at it more than a cage, because the knob is the word 2. Of scary expectations, of wilting dreams, in the boxes of society, she is shriveling inside. Her spirit, her heart, trampled by whispers and fantastical worlds, shall break free of rules, cross-echoing chasms, or 2 cross-echoing chasms, but really she's ensnared. Now, I'm going to pause right there. Breaking free of rules, 2 cross-echoing chasms. The word 2 being offset could also be an image leap for crossing chasms, or 2 cross chasms. So the fact that the 2 is put so far out might not just be the knob for the door, which is now what my brain is saying it is. Now that I said it's a door and a wall, I can't unsee it. So that 2 might also be to echo the chasms of the words. So at first, I was looking at this like, this is kind of abstract, but it's not abstract. It's an example of contrapuntal concrete, which I honestly didn't think I would see. So this is neat. Okay. But really, she's ensnared of her tears and sorrow, grasping for a beacon, a piece of driftwood, of stone, glass, anything. In the ocean she swims, in the icy, crushing waves, an escape, an exit, a path out of the darkness, an open doorway to lead her out of the fear of voices and constraints of dreams. So, yeah, this is definitely a door for it. So, this is concrete contrapuntal, not abstract, which is itself a fantastic and very interesting piece. Although sometimes I feel like her word choice trips on itself a little bit to make the poem the way it is. But you don't understand how hard it is. So many times I've had to use parentheses and whatnot to make something maybe even halfway decent. So this is an example of concrete contrapuntal, which could also be in the abstract family, but like I said, I didn't want to bring abstract to the table so much. because that gets a little bit fucky. All right, I did all of my notes on here, so because the rest of it will be just me freeballing. So I wanted to take you now to an example of a shuffle or stacked contrapuntal poem. This is by Robert Lee Brewer, who is the poetry editor of Writer's Digest, our magazine, yeah. So he starts out with 2 poems he wrote, and then literally takes them and puts them into a 3rd poem. So, The Light at the End. Before leaving the house, I saw the storms approach and thought, here it comes, the end, a bright flash of light across my face. Then I heard the thunder. The Tunnel. Wandering these empty rooms, dark and devoid of life, lonely moments to bend, of every lost love letter, I remember the desire shaking me inside and out. And then they combine to make the 3rd poem on the page, The Light at the End of the Tunnel. Before leaving the house, wandering these empty rooms, I saw the storm approach, dark and devoid of life. And I thought, here it comes, lonely moments to bend the end, a bright flash of every lost love letter, of light across my face. I remember the desire. Then I heard the thunder shaking me inside and out. Now, in order to get this correct, if you will look carefully, he has played with the punctuation. So, like in poem 2, the 2nd line ends with an M dash. In the poem, which would be line 4 on the bottom poem, there is a comma. So he has to mess with the punctuation between versions of the poem to actually get it to connect more fully and smoothly. It doesn't change any of the lines exactly, but it's more of a tweak, a little bit of a trick, just to make it easier on the reader than to have to worry about, does this read clunkily? Because part of poetry is you have to leave someone a doorway in order for them to read it correctly. That's why where you put your commas and everything is just as important sometimes as your word choice. Because if you give someone something in a poem, but you don't let them pause in the correct spot, they will emphasize the wrong image or the wrong word, and sometimes that can create a very different meaning than what you intend. So his little bit of movement around of the different punctuation marks actually is for the reader's benefit. More of a roadmap, so to speak, for the new territory you find yourself in. And if you'll notice, the lines alternate. So the first line of the new poem is the first line of his first poem. The second line of the new poem is the first line of his second poem. And they keep alternating until the bridge is completely made. So while it is like the side-by-side contrapuntal, it gives you more of a, how do I put this? I don't want to say a shuffled effect because that's what I call it, but I don't think this has. See, one thing people do when they deal with contrapuntal is they don't always call it contrapuntal. So, like, they don't say, oh, this one is a side-by-side. This one is a vertical contrapuntal or a shuffled or whatever. Now, the reason I know about shuffled or stacked contrapuntals, and that's just my name for them, is there is something called a cascade poem. And that is where you have your first quatrain, your first 4 lines as a stanza, and then you have 3 more stanzas where the second line of your first stanza becomes the last line of your second stanza, and then the last line of your, they keep pulling the top stanza down into the last lines of the rest of your poem. And that's how I kind of know about the shuffling, because cascade is a sort of trick like that. But a cascade is not a full remergence of a new poem at the end. It is just basically like a very heavy-handed callback. So that's where it differs. Okay, and then the last example I have for you, and already the last slide, because I never want these things to take overly long, is the Venn diagram contrapuntal. And doing this for you, I tried very hard to make my circles different colors. Now, if we'll remember what each of them stands for, it is that the middle poem, which we will read first in a moment, must stand alone, but the ones on the left and right sides do not have to. But everything in the pink circle has to go together, so the left has to end with the middle, and everything in the purple circle has to go together, so the middle has to start the right. So we're going to read the middle first. You called me a monster. I dreamed of eating the sun to erase your aftertaste. But if you read the left straight down, it will not make sense. Watch this. Sweat-filled nights to chase away, you swore. Okay, on and on. But then we take the middle column and make it the end for these. So sweat-filled nights, you called me to chase away a monster you swore I dreamed of as the moon was eating the sun. I fought your demons to erase the ones taunting me in your aftertaste. See? You take the middle column, and that's how you end the left. And now you go to the right. You called me to say it's over. A monster screamed in my chest. I dreamed of blissful yesterdays, eating the sun like an orange, to erase the shadows of your aftertaste from my mind. They have the middle column in common, and they are similar poems in some ways, working in tandem, but yet it is not the same. I find this fascinating because I wonder if you can put in a third circle. And then the third circle would have to probably be a shuffle poem, if you think about it. So maybe you could do a third circle on the bottom with a shuffle. So you would have to like move it around, but you wouldn't have any room to put it down. So we might have to stick to just 2 columns on a Venn diagram poem, because that's basically what a Venn diagram poem is at its core, is just the overlapping circle with the 2. So bearing that in mind, that is literally all the slides I have today for my presentation. I always try to keep these short and sweet and give you more resources and whatnot, because I want you to take what you've seen, and if anything sparks you, I want you to be able to easily find it and go back and try it for yourselves. This I wrote last night, maybe the night before, and it's not good. But it's the first time I've ever seen a Venn diagram contrapuntal. Yep, this is mine. This is my first and only try. I'm like, can we bang it out in a half an hour? Just to see what happens. So this is mine. And anything I didn't credit to someone else has been mine. The 3 column from before is mine, the Frayed Love. And the one about the dual poem, where you're supposed to both read the different things. Thank you. But yeah, so 3 of these are mine. And I want to try more Venn diagram poems. I love the idea of non-traditional formatting on the page. I think it is so good to have something different, and I think people get stuck where they are. And when I saw the Venn diagram poem, I was actually quite excited, because to me, a column poem, or now that I know the proper name for it is contrapuntal or twin cinema, to me, those were all the kind of poems that, you had to have kind of uniformity. You had to have everything make sense. That's one of the reasons I stay away from the abstract. Yeah, I actually had something about eating skyscrapers to erase your aftertaste at first, but I was like, I like eating skyscrapers like popsicle like Godzilla. So, but then the way I had to fit columns A and C into B would not have made sense. So what they recommend you do, and this is what I did when I wrote my Venn diagram contrapuntal, is focus on the middle first. And then right around the middle. Because if you don't focus on the middle will not make sense mostly by itself. And you need that in a Venn diagram contrapuntal to actually have the coherent, cohesive poem in the middle holding these other two sides together. Almost like, Hercules holding up columns or something. So, yeah. One of the reasons I love column poems so much is because it requires both sides of your brain. It requires the creativity to come up with the ideas and what form it'll take and whatnot, but also, since you are doing that checking and to see how even the backstitching is, you have to be like, okay, I have to change the tense in this word, and then I have to change the image over there for this all to make sense. So you actually, when you go through an edit, which is already an analytical part of your brain, or should be, a little more than your creative brain, it really takes over. It has to. So it's almost like dissection and remaking and figuring out where all the pieces work and where they don't. So I absolutely love the form. Every poem I've ever written that I have tried to publish for contrapuntals have been published. And I think it's because people are just so damn impressed that everything goes together. I think it's more than the surprise. It makes your brain happy to see the columns and then read it as a whole and you to go, oh my fucking God, this all works. It all clicks, at least on some level. And I think that's what happens is if you haven't been introduced to column poetry very often, it makes your brain happy. And like I said, I haven't had one poem that has languished in a drawer that is a type of column poem because people are just so shocked. And it's not even that I do it well. It's just such a novel thing that people don't see much, but yet it's not a party trick because you take two halves and you make a whole or even more parts. And that is just, it's so satisfying. It's really satisfying when it comes together. I don't know how to describe it. So maybe people have the same thing I do where when you see it all work, even if it's not yours, you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Or when you look at it and you can see this image evolving over here versus over there, it's amazing to me, And like when I finally realized that the middle of the Chelsea's poem, I think it was Chelsea's poem, became the doorway, and I was like, holy shit, that's why she put the two over there. When I'm looking at it farther away, I can see it. So yeah, exactly. That's what they do. You have two or more poems that make a new whole when put together. And that's why it's based off of counterpoint music, because jazz will a lot of times have like, okay, the bass is doing this kind of thing, and then you'll have like the saxophone playing this whole different song, and it all comes together in a new form, and you can feel it when it clicks over. And it's important for it to click over. And I don't really like column poems where the columns don't all make sense by themselves. Like, it took me a minute to be like, okay, this Venn diagram thing actually slaps. Because to me, when I read the Venn diagram poems and how to do them, I was like, no. If everything is a different section, everything has to make sense. But that's not what it's about. It's about taking the middle as a standalone and adhering it to other things and creating two separate things from the adherents. It's not about a cohesive whole to all the parts on the page. It is about just taking one cohesive part and then melding it into two other parts to make three separate sections. And I thought that was just such an interesting thing, but I have to let go of the way I've been taught. I hold on to it for too long usually. But that being said, I think I've taught you everything I can on this basic primer. Go back through and search for the abstract thing if you want to see it and whatnot. There are plenty of poems out there. I don't write the ones that are like all over cattywampus because I need some sort of direction and I need some sort of reason why certain things are the way they are on the page. Even if I'm playing with page space, I always have to have a reason why. So, all right, that is my long-awaited, long-promised column poem stream. I hope you enjoy. And I don't know when the next one will be, but I know as early as next week I might actually do another crafting stream because I need to start getting my Christmas cards going. So you might find that out soon. And so, okay, so wait, Shai said, I think I mathematically be to show a single thing by itself isn't complete too. It could be, but I think a lot of like contrapuntal is about taking completion and being like, you can make it better, like you said, or just here's what else. And I think it's a type of metamorphosis. Like, okay, when we look at a caterpillar, it's complete, but it's not because it's waiting on something. It's waiting on the metamorphosis. And I like the idea that we can be complete, something can be complete, but yet it's like, but what if this? But what if we try that? And I love the what if of the poems. And then when you put them together, it's like, what if this makes this? And what if it actually says that? And I appreciate that so much. And it says a lot about me, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I will see you in the next one. Next week is more Sea of Stars. We are getting to the end game, I think. More Rogue Legacy 2 and or more kinds of like card crafting because like I said, I got to get my card shit done for Christmas. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. Be safe. I know a lot of you are putting up holiday decorations as it's the first weekend of December, and take care of yourselves, okay? I appreciate you. See you in the next one. Bye!